Hello aspirants, looking at editorials and question bank for 30th November. The first editorial in the Hindu newspaper is a last chance for amnesty. So amnesty basically means political pardon. That a person who has committed a political offense is officially pardoned. So here this is amnesty with respect to taxation. So government had initiated two major taxation amnesty schemes. One was on declaration of foreign assets, which was there in 2015 announced, and another amnesty was the income disclosure scheme, which was announced on 1st June. It was announced for a 4-month window from 1st June to 30th September. So all those who would declare income during this time frame would have to pay tax at the rate of 45%, and they would not be prosecuted under any laws for violation of the taxation laws. So this amnesty was provided. Of course, penalty is also taken in. Presently, again, the government has announced an amnesty scheme post the demonetization, as much of currency is coming into the bank accounts. So the government says that you come forward and declare your income and file the correct return. So based on that, 50% tax would have to be paid, plus 25% of your deposit should go into Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, which would be used for social sector schemes. So this is the new law brought into effect. So the previous income disclosure scheme had given good results. So now this is required to ensure that people come forth and declare their true income. So there have been many clever ploys used by the people, the editorial says, to convert black money into white. People have been hired to stand in queues for exchanging currency, which was allowed for a few days and is no longer done. Then even people put in their currency in the Jan Dhan accounts of these poor people which have been opened up. So this also was another way in which people tried to make their black money white. Even here restrictions have been put up by the government, as much as even withdrawals from Jan Dhan account presently are restricted to up to 10,000 per month. So government is coming up with measures to counter these practices of converting black money into white. Then another is about asking the taxmen to come and admit to their illicit tax income, so that only penalty is what they would have to pay. So there have been novel ways in which people are trying to convert their black money into white. Areas in which commodities which are allowed to be purchased using old currency, people are buying those in bulk. So all this is going on. So government is coming up with measures to ensure that these practices can be curbed and all the black money in the economy comes forth into the bank accounts and taxes are paid. So this is the scheme, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. If you don't disclose your income under this scheme too, this is up to 30th December 2016 that it would be valid. Then rather than paying 50% of total tax amount and getting amnesty from wealth tax and other taxation related laws, you will have to pay 75% tax. But with respect to the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, you would not get amnesty from provisions of laws with respect to Foreign Contribution Regulation Act or Narcotics Act. So if you are having illegal economic activities through which black money has been generated, then you will be prosecuted under those. But with respect to taxation laws, you would get amnesty. Then the next editorial is finally a step towards change. So this is regarding Nepal and the constitution making process in Nepal. The Communist Party of Nepal surrendered, these Maoist leaders surrendered before the government. They gave up arms and they were integrated into the mainstream. So this political party, Communist Party of Nepal, headed by even the present Prime Minister Prachanda, this party has been integrated, but the new constitution making process, they demanded a federal constitution. So this constitution making process has been stalled. The first constituent assembly which was formed by Nepal and which gave out a new constitution for Nepal, this constitution could not be acceptable and that was rejected. So this was the 2017 constitution, interim constitution, and then the final constitution came forth in 2015. So this is in effect since September 2015, more than a year ago. And this was by the second constituent assembly, because first constituent assembly failed to produce a constitution in the mandated period. So after this constitution has been passed too, there have been protests, more so by the Madhesi group. So Madhesis are this population in Nepal here you can see in the southern part of Nepal. So these fringes, this is India's neighborhood. So they are close to India. They even ethnically they are close to India. Plus these are the fertile regions of Nepal rather than these hilly tracts up here. Plus these people constitute a major section of the population of Nepal. But the hill people discriminate against them. So that is the problem for them. So this 60% is what they comprise of, but the land area which they acquire is quite low. So when elections are being conducted, if seats are conferred based on area, then their share reduces, and they want conferring of seats with respect to population. Even the delimitation of constituencies, formation of constituencies for elections which are done, if the constituencies have been formed in such a way that within their constituency they become a minority. So they have been raising their voice against all these provisions which were there in the former constitution, and an amendment has been proposed finally now. You must be knowing about the whole Madhesi agitation. We have discussed it few days back too, when Madhesis protested against this constitution implementation and initiated a blockade. So Nepal depends on trade. It is majorly dependent on trade from India. So trade routes from India were blocked by these Madhesis. So this resulted in the Nepal, the upper tracts of Nepal suffering, the hill people suffering. So this was said to be trade embargo imposed by India, when India cried that it was helpless since the Madhesis were blocking and not us. So this again, India is sympathetic to Madhesi population and they want Nepal to take their views into consideration, bring in an inclusive constitution, which is not liked by Kathmandu, so the capital of Nepal. Even China brought in support. This is the Tibet-China region here. So China came in to the rescue of Nepal during those times. So then even eventually the trade embargo was lifted and the crisis dissipated, but still the demands stay, and the present amendment which has been brought in will ensure that these demands are fulfilled. So there are other provisions also where gender discrimination is highlighted. So with respect to citizenship, women getting the citizenship rights for their children is difficult. So these provisions are also protested against by human rights activists. So there are certain controversial provisions. So you can see this plains of Madhes. They cover 22 of Nepal's 75 districts. 17, this is 17% orange region, 17% of Nepal's area, but more than 50% of its population. So you can understand from this Madhesis. So this is what is being discussed here, that Communist Party of Nepal has now approved amendments to the constitution and they have been tabled in the parliament. So they have to be passed by the political organization. So that will be the test. If these provisions are passed, then the delimitation of constituencies and federal redrawing of boundaries, as you know, allowing Madhesis to dominate in the Terai regions. So this will be ensured if these amendments are passed. Also recognition of rights of naturalized citizens, especially women, as we saw right now that women getting citizenship rights is also a little discriminated against. So these provisions are also included, and bringing in proportional representation in upper houses. So based on the population and not the area. So that is proportional representation. These are the amendments suggested which have to be passed by the parliament. So of course there is conflict within the parliament between various political parties. So this is the major challenge. So the editorial says that it has been 10 years since CPA, Communist Party of Nepal, gave up arms, and it has established its constituent assembly also, but then the consensus has been difficult to achieve. So this is being highlighted. So even presently the government formed is on a agreement between two political parties when each leader would get 9 months in power. This is Prachanda, the Communist Party of Nepal leader, who is there for 9 months. Then next 9 months will go to the other political party, and eventually a new government would be formed. So there have been conflicts in Nepal. Even the former Prime Minister of Nepal had to step down when he lost support, and even he called that to be a conspiracy by India to bring his government down. That was Oli government, KP Oli. So there have been controversies, and India-Nepal relations have been delicate during these times. But then it is important that Nepal brings in an inclusive constitution. That's what India emphasizes on, and it is right in principle, because without an inclusive constitution, Nepal itself would suffer because of internal unrest. Next, we look at the question bank. So 2 questions have been picked up. The first question is, the transition of India towards becoming a cashless society needs to effectively counter cybersecurity concerns. Elucidate on the role of digital payment platforms, customers and governments in ensuring this. So we have already seen one article on one question which we have discussed on cashless economy, the pros and cons of this. Now this is based on one con of moving towards a cashless society, that is cybersecurity concerns. So this is solely based on from that perspective. So we have seen financial data breaches as recent as even the cybersecurity breach which happened, in which Hitachi ATMs, network of these ATMs, were infected by a malware. So there was a malware installed in these ATMs which enabled hackers to steal users' login credentials and make illegal transactions. So many people in India complained that there have been transactions and withdrawals from their accounts when they have not been in those foreign locations and not been in those withdrawals. So these have come forth right now. So even the government asked for ATMs to look into the matter, and whether these ATMs have been corrected or not is not clear. While with the demonetization drive now, people are rushing towards ATM to make withdrawals without understanding the security concerns. So this is being highlighted, that without having clear cybersecurity measures in place, moving towards a cashless economy can be dangerous. So there are data security standards. There are many online transactions like Paytm, which provides mobile wallets. So there has been a huge increase in its mobile application downloads, to which it has put forth. So here Paytm also uses this payment card industry data security standards, which are very high in security measures. So such provisions are required to ensure that data security stays high. But then that is not the only way in which data breaches can take place. Even due to the failure of the customers themselves, we hear of many cases where you get fraud calls and people try to take out information, even pins from people who unknowingly even reveal that. They pose as bank officers or some way in which they do this. So such frauds can take place, and with present shift and push towards cashless society, it is equally important that customers and users, especially first time users, are first educated about the security concerns which may arise, and then they move towards this cashless system. So we hear of even stores, grocery stores and all forms of small scale stores also being asked to use cashless transactions, point of sale devices which they are asked to, POS terminals which they are asked to use. So all this requires that they are aware of all these data security concerns too. So this is being highlighted. Then another thing is about the collective responsibility. So it's the responsibility of all three: the companies, the government and the customer. The companies have to increase awareness among customers of the risks involved. They have to educate them about how to keep their information secure while using online transactions. They have to be clear, having clear behavioral analytics of fraud prevention department, which should be active and alert, rather proactive, and make sure that no fake applications are put forth. The fake websites of theirs are not on the platform, on the internet. So all these are required. So they have to bring in proactive measures. The government should have a clear policy and update it regularly. It should educate people about the risks involved. It should have strict enforcement of cybersecurity laws. So public-private partnership can also be brought in to tackle cyber attacks and to prevent cyber attacks as well. And the third, customers also have to check the authenticity of any application, because generally we download mobile applications and there are many fake applications too. So these applications then take various permissions from you, so they can download various information, they get access to these. So while you are downloading mobile applications, you should be clear about how authentic that application is. Read its customer reviews, read its ratings, and see how many downloads does it have. So if it is a popular application, then you may go ahead and download it. Otherwise, it is a huge security breach here which can take place. So all these are their green padlock symbol, which you generally see up here on the websites too. So this tells you whether it is an authentic website or not too. So generally larger websites with huge flow of customers, huge access to these websites, they have such padlock, green padlock symbol. So when you are using any banking internet website, then you have to look for these symbols also, look for these authenticity symbols, signs, so that you can access them without any fear. So these are the points put forth where even customers have to be aware, safeguarding your PIN and all those aspects. So this is about the cybersecurity aspect with respect to cashless transactions, and especially safeguarding the vulnerable population, the first time users, the poor who would come forth in this cashless economy. Then the next question is, discuss the impact of demonetization on the banking sector, interest rates and investments in India. So with respect to demonetization, we have seen that people are going ahead and depositing their cash with the banks. So bank deposits have been swelled. So this increase in bank deposits, more amount of money with the banks, enables the banks to provide more loans to. So credit means loans. So when the banks will have the capability to provide more loans, then there will be excess of liquidity in the economy. Excess of liquidity means more amount of cash in the economy. So RBI has to take care of this. More of liquidity in the economy means inflation risks. Inflation may rise. So for this purpose, what RBI has come forth with is an order which says that banks have to deposit 100% CRR for the time frame from 16 September to November 11. So this has been the orders to ensure that no excess liquidity comes in the economy in India. So this will ensure that entire amount, what is cash reserve ratio, is the percentage of the total deposits of the banks which banks have to keep with the RBI, and on this they get zero returns, no returns as such, no interest as such. So this 100% will be the CRR for this time frame. And of course, RBI says that this is a temporary measure which has been put forth for a short-term basis to prevent excess liquidity presently. Generally, to suck in excess liquidity, excess amount of cash in the economy, the RBI comes up with market stabilization scheme, which was first introduced in 2004. So under this, it sells bonds, government bonds, treasury bills, government securities are sold off in the economy. So banks buy these government securities, and in return of this, they get an assured interest. So there is an interest rate which has to be paid to the banks. So this RBI presently says that this MSS scheme cannot be brought in a hurry. So that is why this temporary measure of 100% CRR has been brought in. Another point which is highlighted is with respect to NPAs, non-performing assets in banks. So in India, 70% of the banking assets are with public sector banks. So PSUs dominate. Plus, the number of NPAs are also very high with public sector banks. So these non-performing assets are also a hindrance. So it does not mean that when banks would get excess of deposits, they would go onto a spree of providing credit and initiating another risk of them turning into NPAs. So that's why to safeguard this too, it is difficult to predict that banks will provide more credit in the economy since the deposits have swelled, even despite the 100% CRR. 100% CRR takes this expectation further low. So what was expected was, since banks have much deposit with them, then they are free to provide more loans, and because of this, the interest rates on loans would also come down. So credit would become cheaper. So those were the expectations, interest rates would come down, but then there is a caution here that this is not going to take place. So that is highlighted. Then another is about government securities. So government securities were giving higher yield. So 10-year government securities yield presently has fallen to less than 6.25%. So this is 1.2% drop since last year, and 2% drop since 2 years ago. So these government securities returns are also reducing, which affect not just domestic investors but foreign investors too, because securities in dollars are paying better. So dollar is having attractive because with Donald Trump becoming the president of USA, and his ideas being put forth of bringing in more returns on interests in dollars, the securities there would be more attractive. So foreign investors are selling off securities here and going and investing in dollars in USA. So this is again a concern for India. So when government securities will not pay well, not just domestic investors but even foreign investors would flee. So that is highlighted. Even foreign portfolio investment, FIIs, which are investments done on on a short-term basis. So FDI investments are long-term investments. Short-term investments, you invest in securities, you invest in stocks. So all such securities and such investments can be taken back at any point of time. So we have seen even a flea of FPI. So FPI in debts in India has also reduced drastically. So this is also cause for concern. So they are investing more in dollars rather than investing in India. So all these aspects have to be taken into consideration. So there are positive expectations from US Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of USA. So US Federal Reserve is going to increase its policy rate. That is the expectation. The meeting is scheduled for December 14. So we would come to know what is the US Federal Reserve's decision, and the policy rate if increased, then the positive expectations will further be augmented, and it will result in further flee of currency from foreign currency from the investments from the economy in India. So with this, keeping this in mind, even RBI is having its policy rate decision, which will come forth on 7th December. So what happens here too, which is preceding the US Federal Reserve meeting, we'll have to wait and watch. So there are expectations that policy cut would not be very high. So let's see. So that is highlighted. Plus another point is about the tackling of black money. So tackling of black money, the article says that it's not just by tackling cash aspect, but even looking into real estate transactions, gold, holdings abroad, donations to political parties, and improving tax law and the law enforcement agencies, judiciary will help in tackling black money rather than just looking into cash transactions and cash with the people. So this are the points which are highlighted here. So this is how the three aspects which the question put forth. The impact of demonetization on banking sector, and because of banking sector, the activities in the banking sector, how the interest rates would come forth to, even the interest rates of banks and interest rates of the government with respect to even dollar security rates, and investments, how investments would be affected in India. So that impact is discussed here.